Hello, everyone. Good. Someone with courage saying hello to a stranger. That's good. My mother always told me, don't speak with strangers, please. So your mother gave you some different instructions. I'm joking. Everyone feeling good? Enjoying this conference so far? Yes? With me, it's going to become worse. Okay, no, I hope not. So my name is Ricardo Tomé, and apologies, as you can see, I'm having what a speaker shouldn't have, cough. So when I cough, I will do and then you need to have some patience, okay? So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about transforming C-level executives. Okay, so it's a work that I've been doing a lot in the past 4 or 5 years. So I want to share my experience, and actually a couple of slides. It's work that I've been doing this week. So it's actually really up-to-date work, okay? And always the aim is to try to stop with the agony of dealing with C-level executives that really don't understand what they are doing, especially in this agile domain. So they all know it by description, they know the definitions, but then they really don't understand how can we actually execute an agile transformation, okay? So we'll try to close the gap. Are you happy? Do you want to leave the room? No? Just being friendly, isn't it? Fantastic. So, I was talking, let's not talk with strangers, so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. So, I started in 2002 doing some extreme programming. And that was what I knew about Agile at that time. So it was just from a software engineering perspective. But in 2006, I got a role as program manager, and then I started thinking, so how can I actually apply this type of agile techniques at a different level? So that's when I started considering innovation, scaling agile, and I was managing a big program in Portugal to create the first digital courts in the Portuguese Ministry of Justice. If we would go to a Portuguese court 15 years ago, we would only see paper. We couldn't see people because people were hidden behind the paper. So it was amazing. So we wanted to stop that. And then by using agile practices, we saved that program, and I was eternally grateful to it. And that's when I decided, oh, that's what I'll do in my career. Only agile stuff, okay? And then in 2012, I moved to the UK. I'm originally from Portugal. And then I worked for different clients, IBM, Lloyd's Banking Group, HSBC, where I'm at the moment, always working as an agile coach, okay? So at the moment, I work at HSBC as an agile coach. So I work for multiple areas, and I work with engineering teams, I work with management, I work with executives, I work with the business as well, train them, coach them, mentor them. I do a little bit of everything, like a real Portuguese guy. We do a little bit of everything. We don't like to just do one thing, okay? I do some training as well, not as a goal, just as a consequence. I train people because I want to share my experience. So I don't just do training sessions. Training sessions are just part of my work, okay? I run a meetup as well in London called In Product Delivery, where I invite people to talk there as well and to share their knowledge. That one is actually very good. It was at Google offices. We invited Chris Matz. He was one of the guys creating BDD. So it was a very good talk. And as you can see, I speak where people want me, okay? Like here, okay? So that's me, my life, boring life in 2-3 minutes, okay? So what are we going to talk? So what's the agenda for today? Very, very simple. I'm going to explain the approach that I usually take to engage with C-level executives, okay? And then we're going to see real examples, okay? That's where the value is, okay? Expectations for the session. This is not a funny presentation, I'm afraid. So I don't have any slides with jokes and all of that, because this is boring material to show to C-level executives because they are boring. So I'm sharing boring material as well, okay? But that's how it is. Not all presentations can have cool slides, okay? I have some with cool slides, but not this one, I'm afraid. And it's going to be dense. So as you see, there is material there, and that's the value, and then you can use that material. So I'm going to share the slides with you, and then you can use it. I'm not going to read everything, of course. I'm just going to highlight what I think are the most important points for today. Is it fair? Do we have a deal? Yes? Cool. You guys are very friendly. It's usually C-level executives, they are not, okay? Goals. So what I would like you guys to understand is how to engage better with C-level executives and to better create agile strategic plans, okay? Yes, we need strategy when we are rolling out agile transformations, okay? I prefer to call them agile journeys, but because the term agile transformation is the kind of the coined term, and that's the term that everyone uses, that's fine, okay? So, let's start with the action. So what are the problem statements, okay? Problem statement is, C-level executives, they know everything. Is there anything they don't know? Of course not, okay? They will tell you guys, I know that stuff already, Ricardo, stop it, I know it. They like to follow fashion, okay? And Agile is fashion nowadays. Everyone is doing it, so I need to do it as well, okay? So the reason for doing it is everyone else is doing it, okay? Lack of time. So they always tell, oh yes, we want to do an Agile transformation, but no one has time to do it. So that's a big problem, okay? And there is a big paper, what I call the paper to execution gap. So they know the definitions, they don't know how to execute, so we need to close the gap, okay? Wrong perception, okay? They think everything is easy, everything is under control, and it's not, okay? And lack of communication skills, okay? If we are in a more agile environment, one of the key elements is communication. It's to cascade intent. It's to explain why they are not good doing it. They are very good dictating what to be done. They are not good explaining why, and that's when everything fails. Okay? If no one understands why they are doing something, especially related with change, we fail. Okay? So those are the key problem statements that I try to address every time I speak with a C-level executive, because if I can address them, I'm creating a safety net for them. Okay? And that's what they need. So, speaking about the approach, first thing that I try to do, seek empathy. Although all the C-level executives, they seem very like robotic guys, they are humans, okay? We need to seek empathy. First thing is, we need to understand their worlds. Okay, we need to understand their pains, and we need to appreciate they are human beings. So we need to be bold and treat them like that. Okay, so and we need to understand their feelings as well. So doing one-to-ones with them, it's very, very important. Okay, and then communicate your understanding. So if you always have the fear to say something that it's right just because the other person is going to perceive that as something wrong, you are going to fail right away. Okay? Manage expectations and perception from the beginning. It helps to create a trust relationship over time. Okay? It's very, very important. Okay? Network of influence. So what I always do is, we have C-level executives who are the guys that they trust right now. And sometimes what I do is I start working with those guys that they trust first, because then they can influence C-level executives as well. So when I'm going with a proposal for them, it's never my proposal, it's the proposal of the guys that they trust. I try to shift the ownership. So it's not Ricardo's proposal, it's not Ricardo's plan, it's the organization's plan that someone is owning and someone is giving input to it. Okay? That's very important. And I ask questions. I ask loads of questions, and those are examples of questions that I ask to them. Are you sure your organization is, sorry guys, able to survive against current new disruptive innovators, one step ahead of competitors, not generating a lot of waste, capable of attracting the best talents, getting the most value from each employee, keeping customers delighted? If their answer is yes to all of them, I say, bye, there is no work for me. But usually, the answers are no. And that's the starting point of the conversation, okay? If there is something that you don't feel comfortable, let's exploit it, okay? Again, if it's not based on their answers, if I go there with a recipe already, with proposing, oh, do that and do that and do that, it's when we start failing. So we need to connect our experience with what they think it's a pain as well, okay? And those questions are just examples, okay? Keep it simple, okay? When I sometimes have a look to some decks related with agile transformations, they usually have 200 slides, and it's something very complex, no one understands them, and it's very, very expensive. What I always do, keep it simple, and the three main components are these three ones. First, define principles. So define the statements that can represent a future achievement, okay? Something that they would like to see better, okay? I'm going to show examples, okay? Next element is, okay, so we defined what we think good looks like. How can we actually measure success? Okay, since the beginning, real time. So the next step is to define measurable outcomes. Okay, something that we can start measuring to see if the agile transformation is going on the right or wrong direction. Okay? Next thing is, let's just scale by applying continuous improvement. Let's create a backlog of actions that links to the outcomes, and those actions will try to improve the outcomes. That's the only thing that we need to start doing something. Okay? If the something that we need to do to start is to change everything radically, and we need to change the organization right away, it is not going to work. Okay? Last but not least, clarity. So all those elements need to be properly understood from a leadership level, and they need to be very well communicated down until the teams. And the message needs to survive the middle management layer. That's where usually you have a big problem. Mid-management, they kill all those good messages, or they transform them or shape them in a different way. So that needs to survive, okay? So what are the building blocks of the strategic plans of an agile transformation, okay? First thing, current state. What are the pains? What are the problems, okay? High-level outcomes. We mentioned this. Now it seems easy. Key impediments as well. If we are not clear about what may block the agile transformation, if we don't mention that right in the beginning, we are doomed, okay? And although we can't and we shouldn't plan an agile transformation at a kind of very low level, those guys they need some actions as well. They need a kind of a plan. So defining a roadmap, saying, oh, this quarter we plan to do this, next quarter we plan to do that, it gives them a little bit of comfort, so we should do it as well, okay? And we should talk about success factors as well. So what do we need to make this happen? Okay, if we don't have those elements, then the probabilities for failing, it's huge, okay? And then an engagement model as well, saying, oh, the agile transformation is going to work this way. Very, very simple, okay? For all of those elements, like I said, I'm going to show examples, okay? Because otherwise, just a list of stuff makes sense, but we need to see it, isn't it? So let's start with examples. And as you can see, the layout changed because this is copy and paste from the material that I have, okay? And although I didn't talk about this block vision, okay, there is something here that is related with what I said. So this is the vision for the agile transformation for one of the areas that I worked this year, okay? And this is a statement here. It was a statement from someone the C-level executive trusts, okay? I can't have it here because of specific reasons, but what I tried to do is to have statements of people saying, this is not working, this is what we think we should improve. And actually for an area that I'm working now, we are doing it even better. We're actually collecting stories. We are collecting 2 successful stories of things that are working and 2 kind of negative stories of things that are actually not working to make it more powerful. So with quotes from people that are working. Okay, so it's good to have that. It makes things more real and we can tell a story. Okay? And then here in the bottom, and apologies for the XXX, it's the area that I can mention the name, but those are the kind of the vision statements, and the way I try to help doing it, it helps us to become more pragmatic. It's not like, oh, we want to be the best company in the world. So that's a good vision statement, but we can't do much with it. So it tries to be a little bit more pragmatic. For example, to drive a culture of continuous improvement. It's still a bit generic, but then we can link outcomes and actions to try to achieve that. Okay? Now, those 3 points, I usually try to keep them just in one slide because they are very, very important. So the current state, reflecting the pains or the opportunities to improve, the key outcomes, and they are high-level outcomes. I'm going to show an example of low-level outcomes, okay? And the key impediments. So let's have a look to 2 or 3 things from each. So big problems in that area were no outcomes defined to properly measure success. Okay, they were measuring success by only saying if, oh, we are finishing stuff on time and on budget. And as you may know, that's not enough whatsoever. Okay? So another one, delivery process can cope with feedback loops and continuous planning. Okay? So again, those are well-known problems in that organization that if we make them visible to C-level executives, they of course we want to make that better. And then it stops, the agile transformation then stops being something about agile. It's not, so the aim is not to become more agile, the aim is to fix those problems. And it doesn't matter if they're agile or not, it's just to make our organization better. And that's what we need to change in their perception. It's not about becoming agile, it's actually to help you addressing your pains. And as soon as they realize that, they become more engaged in the agile transformation. Okay? So let's have a look to some key outcomes. For example, increased delivery visibility and transparency, increased alignment between IT, business, and there is a typo in transformation here. So, so some key outcomes that will allow us to measure if we are going in the right or the wrong direction. Okay? And then key impediments. For example, you guys need to have the courage to say, for example, this one, lack of real sponsorship and pragmatic communications from leadership. So it makes them owning communication. So it needs to be properly communicated, okay? Middle management buy-in, another key possible blocker. So they need to be aware of them, okay? And again, those are just examples. You need to make your blockers explicit. That's the key point. Okay, guys? Current view. Oh. So what I did was, I have a question. That's good. Just to explain those slides, because sometimes when I present this, the screens are smaller. So the next slide is just a repetition with things bigger. So okay, I'm going to move to the next one, and I'm going to give an opportunity for that gentleman to ask a question. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So, what I usually tell people is, what I'm showing you guys, it's a mix of 3 things. What you've told me, what I observed, and my experience. Those are the 3 ingredients to create then the material there. Okay? And it's very important for them to understand it's their stuff. So, but it's important for them to understand that I'm bringing value as well. So it needs to be a mix. Okay? If one of those sides fail, then it's when we are not getting a good balance. Okay? So, you mentioned, so of course, we need to have the principles, we need to have the outcomes to measure success, but they need some actions, okay? And this is just an example of how deeper I go when creating a roadmap. And as you can see, I don't go very deep, okay? Because that's the aim. I'm just giving them the safety net. For example, define a training plan. So to train people in Agile, okay? I'm not saying right away that I'm going to train everyone. Actually, that's what people usually ask me. Oh, Ricardo, can you come here and train 5,000 guys? I tell them, that would be a good business for me, training so many people, but what's the aim of it? Okay? And then it that always ends up being, oh, let's train leadership first. Okay? So we need to give them something, but don't go very deep, because you don't know what is going to happen next. Okay? It's impossible to predict deeply what are the things that you actually can do, because you will face a lot of problems in your journey. So keep it high level. What you can actually detail a little bit more is what I usually call the step 0 for leadership. So what do I need from leadership to start doing this? Okay? And in this case, I have those 5 things. So first one, actually, it's not an action. It's just kind of another principle, but it's a very important one. So recognize that an agile journey is initially a top-down approach. Okay? We all have in our minds that beautiful image that, oh, an agile transformation, everything emerges from the teams, and it's so beautiful, it's like a garden. Of course, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So we need the bottom-up approach, yes, but we need the top-down sponsorship and drive as well, and money. Okay? If we don't have it, things will fail. And that's why sometimes we feel so frustrated, because at the team level, things kind of work, but then outside of the teams, it's just a nightmare, and we have so many silos and so many blockers. It doesn't feel like actually we are in an agile organization, okay? And it's because we don't have the top-down drive, okay? So, again, what I always do is put a lot of focus on the things that leadership needs to do in the beginning, not a lot of focus on the stuff that we need to do more widely, okay? Oh, step 0 for leadership, again, this is to make it bigger, roadmap. So, see, very fast, boom, boom, boom. So, engagement model. And as you can see, I don't have 100 slides to explain how we are going to work, okay? Just 1-2 slides, stop explaining the key elements of it, okay? So, in this case, they had the urgency to define who was leading the agile journey, okay? Someone that people can actually look at and say, oh, there is someone leading this. Sometimes it's very, very important, okay? Then start right away with step 0 for leadership, start running actions for Q3, and continuously refine the roadmap and backlog, okay? A question?
Who is leading the agile journey? So is it you or someone on the organization?
So what I usually propose is someone from the organization. It shouldn't be me whatsoever, because it doesn't make any sense. What I usually try to do is, I need to help the organization to embed agile practices. And that role is key for that, to give the autonomy to the organization. It needs to be someone that is in there, long-term, with a strategic mindset. I've done it in the past, because there was no one to do it, so I was kind of the plan B or plan C, and that's how things are. But I always fight for the plan A, to be someone from the organization to do it. Okay? Again, it would be very good business for me to do that role every time, but then I wouldn't be fair to my own principles. Okay? Autonomy to the organization, that's what I always try to do. Okay? Very good question. Good. And yours was very good as well. He's taking some notes now or doing some drawing. Very good as well. I need to keep friendly. So, and how can we actually progress work? Okay? So, and I always tell, very simple, guys. What I need from you, leadership and C-level executives, is 1 hour every 4 weeks. Okay? And in that hour, what me and the team is going to do is, we are going to articulate what is in our backlog of work. Okay? We are going to explain what we are doing. We are going to define the priorities as well. We explain how should you guys be engaged. And we keep honest, saying if things are going well or not. And we will talk about the outcomes as well, to see if the metrics are actually improving or not. Okay? Very simple. We don't need anything else more complex. Okay? So, and here is some of the goals. A 4-week cycle to keep leadership aware of what is happening and to keep leadership involved. And the C-level executives, they own the principles and outcomes, and the work streams, okay, if we have portfolios and programs, they own the backlog of improvements. because the specific improvements, the actions may vary depending on the area, because they may be doing something different, or their maturity levels may be different as well. So usually we have a backlog sometimes for each work stream. Okay? Mm-hmm.
So what happens? So this is a slide where we are starting with the framing of Agile from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine a company where Agile is in the teams and we want to go upward. Where can we start and how can we
So what usually happens is some of the actions that we define in the backlog, some of them are already happening at a team level. We just need to think things up. We need to synchronize everything. Because what usually happens is a lot of good guys are already doing a lot of good stuff, and we need to use them as role models, as stories, to help others as well. So, and it helps us to understand the progress and the maturity of what we are doing. So in this work, and usually we don't do this in this meeting, but during those 4 weeks, it's one of the things that we try to do as well. So let's find out in that area what is happening already. And sometimes lots of good things are happening already. Okay? And then you say, oh, that's this action much, much easier than we thought. And then I work in areas from 1,000 to 15,000 people. So actually, if we are in that big area, we don't know everything that is happening. Only when we go deeper and work with the teams, it's when we discover. So that's why it's just a waste of time to try to plan a lot. Because we can't know what is happening. Okay? So this one was to explain the role of the Agile Journey Lead. Okay? And this graph here is actually to explain the autonomy related to the organization. Okay? So the role starts with a lot of responsibility in the beginning, but the aim is that over time, that responsibility goes down as soon as the org autonomy goes up. Okay? And there is a point here when we need to refine that the responsibilities of such a role. And the aim is that over time, we don't need that role anymore because continuous improvement is actually embedded in the organization. Okay? So this is kind of a model that I use to explain how should they achieve more autonomy, and actually that the autonomy and continuous improvement is the goal to be achieved. Okay? Some example of success factors, okay, saying, oh, those elements, if we don't have them, we are going to fail badly, okay? Some examples. So if we don't have the Agile Journey Lead, let's just forget it, okay? If we are not outcomes oriented, let's forget it. If business IT and transformation are not aligned, let's forget it. So it needs to be explicit. Again, examples, okay? And this helps as well. So what should we see at the end? So we've been talking about loads of things, but what should we see in 1 to 3 years' time? And those are some statements reflecting that. So they are not outcomes. They represent kind of behaviors. Okay, let's have an example. So we will see the organization having the capability to deliver frequently. We will have higher employees retention. We will have small autonomous delivery teams. That's what we should see. So if at the end of 2 years we are not seeing any of these, we missed the point. So this helps for people to see things a bit better. The outcomes help to track the progress, but people need to understand what they will see at the end, okay? So this will help them to create a more tangible idea about what needs to be achieved, okay? So I talked about principles. So the first statements shaping some pains and needs. This is actually work that I've done 2 weeks ago, okay? So those statements here represent improvement opportunities, okay? And I usually group them in kind of different themes. So for example, adaptive org structure. So having a clear, visible, and up-to-date org structure. Define roles and accountabilities. Reduce number of silos and external handoffs. So let's have a look to this one, customer-centric business. So all initiatives to have customer outcomes defined, design thinking to drive requirements discovery. Okay. Then what I ask them is, guys, from everything that you see there, what's the priority? Select 2 or 3 that you think, let's try to solve these ones. Let's try to improve these ones. And then they do it. Okay? And then it's their choice. They are owning it. Actually, that's fine. Even if I think that something is more important, it doesn't matter. Okay? Because we are always talking about long-term journeys. Okay? So if we give them ownership, it's when we start engine actually working. Okay? And that's the aim. We need to make the engine start working. Okay? And then we start talking about outcomes, okay? Different outcomes here, and have them written in a more outcomes structure. So, and again, I usually describe them and organize them within themes. So, for example, governance, decrease ITSA complexity. So ITSA, it's one of the processes there, okay? And usually, if we want to release something new, we need to go through that process, and usually it takes 1 month. So, and as you can see, it's not good, okay? So, technical automation, for example, increase automation, increase environment consistency, okay? So we try to shape the statement starting with increase and decrease, okay? And the next steps are decompose those outcomes in smaller ones, and then create real outcomes. And when I say real outcomes is, for example, let's see a good example here. Increase cross-functionally across teams, cross-functionality across teams. We can actually say we have 100 teams here in the organization and none of them are cross-functional, so we want 50 of them cross-functional in the next 6 months. Then we start adding numbers to the outcomes, and that's when they become real, and that's when we start managing expectations. Okay? So creating real outcomes, it's defining the metrics and the timelines as well. Okay? And then what we do is we link those outcomes to the actions and to the backlogs of work that we are defining, okay? To make things tangible, okay? And we then create a dashboard to actually see the metrics going up or down. A single one-pager, one dashboard that we actually can see, easy to access, okay? This is work done, actually, like I said, last week. And this is a technique I call moonwalk. Do you know Michael Jackson doing moonwalk? I'm not going to do it because I'm very bad dancing. So this is, instead of starting with the principles, we start with the metrics and then we walk backwards to the actions. Okay? And again, I usually organize this by themes. So what do you want to measure from an effectiveness point of view? So we want to measure customer outcomes, business impact. From an efficiency point of view, we want to measure time to deploy cycle time to market cycle time to fix cycle time. Okay? From a team level, employee retention, perm and consultant ratio, multi-skilled engineer by specialists, engineer-manager ratio. So one of the areas that I was working, for each 3 engineers, we had 1 manager. How broken is the organization? Okay? So collecting that data help us to understand how we're evolving the organization. And then usually people say fluffy stuff, understanding how people are feeling as well. Okay? That's very important. So again, those metrics will help to drive actions. Okay? And then walk backwards to it. Okay? Another example. So, key takeaways. Humanize and be bold. If you are not, you will just, you won't survive, basically. Be outcomes driven. Don't forget the metrics whatsoever. Without the metrics, you won't create shared understanding and you won't manage expectations very well. And you can't track progress as well. Shared understanding, I talked about it, so it's very important, especially at leadership, for them to have the same level of understanding, every single guy there, okay? And keep things visible. Your backlogs, your dashboards, they need to be visible, okay? And then scale by applying continuous improvement. Don't just go and try to find out a recipe, and I'm not going to mention any names, But loads of recipes out there, they failed badly in the organization that I'm working now. And those guys tried many of them. Okay, it just failed. It just doesn't work because it doesn't link to the current pains. It doesn't link to the current context of the organization, and it assumes a kind of a Big Bang approach with specific rigid steps, and that's what we should try to avoid. Okay? The same way we say, oh, things from a team level, they need to evolve organically. Things from the top, they need to happen that way as well. So we need to mix as agile coaches, giving some options to them, but they need to be the ones owning the transformation. And they need to be the ones feeling that they are touching it and evolving it as well. Okay? So I don't use any social media rather than LinkedIn, and that's my email. Do you have any more questions, guys? Yes, we have. Go for it. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, that's a very good question. So let me give you an example. So in an area that I started 2 months ago, so we are talking about 10,000 people, around 400 teams. And what we did was we defined generic high-level outcomes. But then because it was very abstract, because it was too big, we said we are going to start with 2 teams, and we are going to define outcomes for those 2 teams. And they were very, very clear. I mentioned the ITSA process there. It was taking 1 month, governance process. Aim is, instead of 1 month, it would be just 0 days because we are going to do automation. Okay? Boom. We achieved that in 1 month. And other improvements as well. And what we did was, so those 2 teams were in a specific work stream with more 30 teams. So what we are doing now is we are rolling out those improvements to the 30 teams. Okay? And what we discovered in this experience was, oh, actually, we should be tracking different outcomes. So what we did at the end of those 4-week period, we went back to the leadership and we refined the outcomes, we refined the actions. So the outcomes that we defined are not stepping stone. It's not something that we define and go away. They won't change. They will change. And that's the refinement process that will help us to scale. Did I answer your question or not really? Yes. Mm-hmm. It is. It is. Yes. But to do it, we just need to start doing stuff. And that's what I always propose. Let's just start doing something. So what I did, I helped to define a criteria for 2 teams to work with us. And they work with us, we solve their problems, so what's next? What are the next 3 or 4 problems that we can solve and help? So in the beginning, we are just working like a normal team works. So in the beginning, they don't know how to do very well estimation because they don't have any background. So they are very bad planning because they don't have any experience working together. And that's what we are doing in the Agile transformation as well. We are starting doing work so we can understand patterns that will help us to shape better the outcomes, the actions, the principles as well. So, but it's by doing stuff that we can learn and improve. Any other questions? Go for it.
According to your experience, when can we say that
So then it's a very boring process. You remember step 0 for leadership? 5 or 4 things there. If he has done that or she has done that, check, 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 is possibly engaged. Okay? So it increases probability of that person to be more engaged. If he hasn't done it, it's explicit. I will keep asking every 4 months. We are still missing this. Any opportunity to do it, because actually it will help us achieving this, this, and this, and this. So for example, one of the things that is missing from there, it's a 30-minute video that the executives will do explaining what an agile transformation would mean for that area. And it's still missing. And I'm telling you, I still go and talk with the teams, and they don't know your aim, your goals. So it's saying, finish time, you can't talk with them anymore. Okay, go away. Good. So it's that if you make it visible, if you make it explicit, it will help you to control that more. As simple as that. I would like to have a magic kind of solution that's as simple as that. I think we are done, guys, so I'm going to continue here until the end. So if you have any more questions, any comments, just please talk with me. Okay? Cool. Thank you, guys.